On September 10th, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking at a university in Utah. And for those of you who don't know who Charlie was, he was a high-profile conservative activist, the founder of Turning Point USA, who was known for his significant influence on young voters, also frequent campus talks, as well as his lively debates with students and his media presence that was quite significant. He was only 31, so close in age to some of you guys here, and he is survived by his wife and 2 young children. Now, I didn't know Charlie personally, and I definitely didn't agree with some of his views, as would be usual for an objectivist not to agree with a religious conservative on some things. And yet, I haven't been able to stop thinking about what happened to Charlie. And if I'm being honest, I found it very, very hard to focus on anything else these past few days, so I decided to turn this into a talk. Part of it, of course, is the obvious and the brutal, senseless killing of a very young man, the devastation to his family, to his friends, to his community. But there's something beyond that. For me, as for many others, this wasn't just a personal tragedy, but what marked, in a way, a very dark day for political discourse in a country that should be setting the standard for how free people debate, how they disagree, and how they handle their opponents. Also, it felt a little bit like a warning to me, a signal that maybe even darker days are in front of us. Because when we step back and look at this event in the broader context of today's America, when we look at its political divisions, the rising tribalism, the open hostility on social media, the normalization of hatred, you cannot escape the feeling that we've crossed into a new, more ominous territory. And what followed in the hours and days after Charlie's assassination added another layer of tragedy. And that was a flood of false claims, conspiracy theories, and also partisan attacks that made it much harder for all of us to separate what's fact and what's fiction, which then deepened the confusion and division at the very moment when we needed clarity most. And this is not just about misinformation living online. These lies and half-truths have very real consequences. They fuel anger, and they could push people who are already on the edge toward further violence. And taken to the extreme, this kind of discourse doesn't just divide a society. It can push it over the brink by eroding the foundations of trust and of civility that hold these very fragile threads of civilization together. And history teaches us that what comes after this is the rule of mob, chaos, and ultimately the collapse into violent barbarism. I've recently finished, and I've been inspired also by Johan Norberg's book called Peak Human, that deals exactly with examining the rises and falls of golden ages of different civilizations. And I expected this book to make me feel a little bit better, but actually I cannot say that I feel more optimistic after reading it. So having all of this in mind, I chose to dedicate this hour that we have together to talk about what did disinformation around Charlie Kirk's assassination look like so far, and how we as individuals can combat being sucked into this whirlwind of very dangerous false narratives. I want to start with what actually happened. So before we talk about the flood of disinformation, it's important to start with what we actually know about the facts of this case. On September 10th, Charlie Kirk was speaking at Utah Valley University, where he was then shot one time in the neck by a lone gunman. It happened in the middle of his speech in front of hundreds of people, and it was caught on video. And please do not go and look for the video because it's absolutely horrific. He was then rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately passed away later that day. And then for nearly 2 full days after the shooting, there was no official information about the suspect. We had no name, we had no confirmed motive, we have no ideological affiliation. Only some photos and videos of the alleged shooter were published, which did in fact then help identify him. More information only came on September 12th, when police announced the arrest of one Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old man. Now, the investigators have already managed to confirm that the DNA that's found near the crime scene matches that of the suspect. They have also managed to link him to the rifle that was presumably used in the assassination. To this day, however, a week after shooting, we haven't been provided with a clear motive since the suspect is not cooperating. But you can actually scratch that. As of this morning, when I woke up, I actually found out that there are some further developments. So Utah prosecutors have brought charges against Tyler Robinson and have released a very damning thread of messages between him and his partner/roommate. And since I learned of this only this morning, I'm not going to share details. But this new piece of evidence does seem to add strength to what the government officials have been saying these past days, which is that the accused subscribes to leftist ideology. There are some other details that have been officially confirmed and that support this theory. Though I have to say that those were fairly scant in my view, and before this morning, I wasn't leaning in any direction when it comes to conclusions. Those details that we have so far is that the suspect said to his family members at a recent family gathering that he doesn't like Charlie Kirk, but with no additional context provided to us so far. Then the engravings on the bullet casings that are one of the crucial pieces of, that are the crucial piece of evidence, had these engravings. So we've been kind of theorizing what all of this means, but some of those engravings could fairly easily be interpreted as left-wing messaging, while others sound a little bit more ambiguous, a little bit more like something from memes and video games. So this further added to the confusion. And then one of the latest pieces of information that we've had till this morning is that the suspect was currently living with a partner who is currently transitioning transgender, male to female person. But this person is fully cooperating with the police, and based on the official reports was in no way involved in the assassination. However, before any of this was officially confirmed, the information vacuum was already being filled, and filled by a huge amount of disinformation coming from all sides. Now I want us to look at what some of the key trends that we can trace since it became public that Charlie Kirk was shot, what they look like. First of all, official announcements, instead of helping us understand things better, calming people down, added to the confusion. We heard multiple times there's a suspect, then there was no suspect. So for 2 days, we didn't know anything. And then, when you have no information, there is always rapid speculation in the absence of verified facts. So by the time we learned any facts, we already have multiple theories being spread on social media. There was also this persistent ambiguity around key evidence. I mentioned the bullet casings with the messaging that were interpreted in various ways. Some said that this was an obvious leftist messaging. Some said that this was a far-right activist being ironic. So this didn't help the narrative at all. Then, of course, there are influencers and high-profile voices who kept releasing unverified or premature claims as if they were actually confirmed truth, and some of them walked that back later, but of course many didn't even bother. Also, we had a trend of polarized interpretations and echo chambers. This is not unique to this case, but it was particularly ugly. The right blamed the left blamed the right, Republicans, Democrats, Democrats, Republicans. And then social media algorithms, of course, amplified all of that, especially the most sensational content, which is, of course, usually not the most accurate. And there were also warnings about disinformation and foreign bot activity. So officials actually confirmed that there were foreign disinformation networks trying to amplify chaos, pushing extreme content to basically provoke social unrest in the United States. Yes, I'm sorry that I forgot about my presentation. But you didn't miss anything important. We're going to get to the important part now. So let's look now at some specific examples of misinformation and disinformation. So first of all, we had this narrative that the shooter was immediately arrested. There were photos and videos of a man who was detained and led away by police. Then FBI Director Kash Patel himself posted that a suspect is in custody. However, within the hour, Utah authorities actually contradicted him. There was actually no suspect, and then Kash Patel came out with an announcement that the suspect they had has been released. Now, mainstream media wasn't in any way blameless in all of this. There came then the Wall Street Journal headline that said there was ammunition recovered from the scene which was engraved with expressions of transgender and anti-fascist ideology. And this story traveled very fast. Commentators on the right especially seized on it immediately, saying that this proves that the shooter was trans and a radical leftist. But then, within a day, Wall Street Journal quietly updated the stories to say that no transgender markings were actually found. And when the actual inscriptions were finally released by the police, they turned out to be this weird mix of what we're still interpreting. So some look like obvious leftist anti-fascist messaging, for example, like, hey, fascist catch, and also lyrics from Bella Ciao. And then others seem to be taken from memes. I'm not going to read those ones, but you can find it yourself online. Let me now see if this is going to work. It's not going to work. No. Okay. So this was supposed to be a video, but I'm just gonna explain here what happened here. So on MSNBC, analyst Matthew Dowd speculated on live air with no evidence whatsoever that the shooter might have actually been one of Charlie Kirk's supporters firing in celebration. And I mean, because this wasn't the only questionable thing that he said, he was, due to the very strong backlash, fired immediately, basically on the same day. And also other theories multiplied online. There was a theory that this was a professional hit, that no amateur could have made that shot, so basically implying that there was a hired assassin. And of course, there was a subset of this theory that said it was a foreign government, basically ordering a killing. And of course, what is the government that's going to be blamed every time anything bad happens? Of course, it was Israel and the Jews. And of course, there are still people on social media circulating this theory, although there is literally zero evidence whatsoever of any of this. And I mean, having in mind that Charlie Kirk was one of the strongest proponents of American-Israeli relationship, this is just plain ridiculous. Then we had this. After the suspect was arrested, there started circulating, first of all, screenshots of documents that proved that Tyler was actually a registered Republican, that he donated to Trump's campaign, and all of this was debunked, and it was proven that it was actually two different people. And then an account, this account called Anonymous, which is not actually the real Anonymous, but whatever. The account with 5 million followers shared an edited photo of the suspect wearing a MAGA t-shirt with a caption, "Tired of these terrorists." And then quietly in the comments, the account also shared the original photo where the suspect is wearing a regular t-shirt, as you can see here. However, at that point, you know, the original tweet was seen by 400,000 people. And then there were also these very widespread theories, and I've seen this coming from sources that I respect, that I find legitimate. This theory circulating that the suspect was actually radicalized far-right Groyper and Nick Fuentes follower. Don't ask me about that subset of people. I don't want to have that in recording. So basically, there were different speculations why Groypers would be involved in this. The bullet casings were one thing. Again, interpreting those messages as actually ironic far-right messaging. Also, there were kind of speculations or allegations without any proof that the suspect, since he was very active online, was a part of Groyper forums and chats. And this still remains one of the most circulated theories among many people on the left. Now, some people started to speculate that the suspect, since he comes from this religious conservative family, was actually radicalized at university. And this was a big talking point that some politicians and influencers focused on quite heavily. However, then it was revealed that he attended university only for one semester, basically during COVID, so we don't even know if he went physically to university. And then he dropped out and started going to a trade school. Now, from the get-go, many people were convinced that the shooter was a radicalized leftist. And then after the suspect's arrest, these rumors were further fueled by this Guardian article, and especially since Guardian is notoriously known as a strong left-leaning publication, so this seemed very credible. And the article cited an anonymous high school friend of the suspect who said that the suspect was the only member of his family that was really leftist, and that he was always ranting and arguing about his political views, which actually claims this person got more extreme around his sophomore year, which, you know, he would have been 15 or 16 at that point. And then this article was circulated, cited countless of times as proof of the suspect's ideological leanings. There was Ben Shapiro on Bill Maher's show who basically cited this article as proof before it was again updated to remove these quotes due to the anonymous source basically being unable to accurately remember the details of the relationship with the suspect. And the last example that I want to give, and that I think is also very important, are these false claims that were circulating about Charlie Kirk himself, sharing his quotes out of context, claiming that he was a terrible person based on these quotes. And then we had one of the most famous living authors, Stephen King, who, by the way, is followed by 7 million people, tweeting on his X account, he advocated stoning gays to death, just saying. And then that was proven to be false and based, again, on a video that was taken out of context. To his credit, Stephen King did delete the tweet and apologize. He said, I apologize for saying Charlie Kirk advocated stoning gays. And then the next one I really like because I think it has a lot to do with what we're talking about today. He said, this is what I get for reading something on Twitter without fact-checking. Very true. So after watching all of this happen, it's very tempting to say that the problem is just bad people spreading lies or stupid people being stupid. But the truth is that even intelligent, reasonable, good people fall for things that turn out to be false. And why is that? There are two different sets of forces at work here. First are internal factors, the way that our minds sometimes work against us. And then there are all of these external factors, the way that our information environment amplifies our mistakes. So I'm just gonna briefly mention some of these factors. The list would be too long to go through everything, but I just want to mention some of the relevant examples. So for the internal factors, one of the most known biases is a confirmation bias, which is when we go looking for evidence that proves what we already believe while dismissing and ignoring the rest. There's also desirability bias, and that's when we believe things because we wish them to be true. There are also, of course, emotions, especially strong emotions like anger, fear, grief, that makes us less rational and more reactive. There is also availability bias, which is basically when the louder or more vivid something is, the more common or likely we think it must be. And then there's the illusion of understanding. So we sometimes shove these complex events into neat, simple narratives, thinking that we actually know more than we do. And then there are different external factors. I think I've mentioned already some of them, like information vacuum. And in the context of investigations, those usually take time, but we don't like to wait, so we fill the vacuum with our theories, speculations, and lies. Then we have outrage algorithms, so platforms reward the kind of content that's most shocking, that's polarizing, and that's also often false. Influencer megaphones as well. A lot of these people now have millions and millions of followers, and then they share their half-baked claims with all of these people without any accountability. There are also foreign disinformation networks that I mentioned, and also then media incentives. I mean, we saw in these examples that I gave you from The Guardian, Wall Street Journal, speed is very desirable in the media. Clicks are often gonna beat accuracy as well. So by the time that facts emerge, these articles and narratives built by the mainstream media have already captured hearts and minds. And basically, those people have already sat on the info that they initially read. So now we have to ask, how can we fight this? And a good thing is that you're here at an objectivist conference, because objectivism actually holds the answer to this question basically directly in its name. And the word is objectivity. So in one of her writings, Ayn Rand defined objectivity in the following way. She said, "Objectivity is both a metaphysical and an epistemological concept. It pertains to the relationship of consciousness to existence. Metaphysically, it is a recognition of the fact that reality exists independent of any perceiver's consciousness. And then epistemologically, it is the recognition of the fact that a perceiver's or man's consciousness must acquire knowledge of reality by certain means or reason in accordance with certain rules or logic." And this is from who is the final authority in ethics from the Objectivist newsletter. Being objective means acknowledging reality even when we wish it were different. It's easy to let our emotions like anger, fear, or even sometimes excitement push us to believe the first story that we see and read because it fits with what we're feeling in that moment. But reality doesn't care about our feelings. Facts need to come first, then interpretations, and then opinions, in that order. Any other sequence will create chaos and ultimately sever our connection to reality. However, objectivity also requires an active mind, one that looks at the evidence, one that checks assumptions, asks questions, and refuses to accept claims on faith. Rand put it this way: "Accept the fact that you are not omniscient, but playing a zombie will not give you omniscience, that your mind is fallible, but becoming mindless will not make you infallible, that an error made on your own is safer than 10 truths accepted on faith, because the first leaves you the means to correct it, but the second destroys your capacity to distinguish truth from error." And this is from Galt's speech. In the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, we can see exactly what happens when people abandon that active mindset. Ultimately, objectivity means taking personal responsibility for what we believe and what we share with others. No influencer, no politician, no journalist can do our thinking for us. The only real protection that we have against misinformation, manipulation, is to be an independent thinker, someone who cares more about the truth than about defending his tribe or his team. So how can we practice objectivity? How can we make it into one of our skills? So David Kelly, the founder of the Atlas Society and one of the most prominent objectivist philosophers, created what he called the 7 habits of highly objective people, which is an obvious wordplay to 7 habits of highly effective people. I love these because they aren't just tips, they're actually in the form of questions, and these are the kind of questions that you can ask yourself anytime when you're trying to pursue truth. You all have a copy of this in your swag bags, and I highly recommend that you read it because I can promise you that David explained this much better than I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be much briefer. So if you actually want to understand this better, please go ahead and read it. Okay, so here are the questions. So before we even start talking about objectivity, there's the first basic question that we have to ask, and that is, what is my purpose, or what am I trying to do here? Thinking is a goal-directed activity. So sometimes my goal is simply to understand something before I make any judgment. Other times I'm speculating, I'm brainstorming different possibilities, different possible explanations or scenarios before I even have facts. And sometimes I'm just imagining. I'm imagining or picturing outcomes, I'm creating new ideas, or I'm just thinking creatively for its own sake. All of this is perfectly fine, but if I don't know which of these things I'm doing, or if I keep switching between the goals without realizing it, I'm going to confuse myself and I'm going to confuse others. And then the same goes for conversations. Maybe I just want to pass along information. Maybe I'm only trying to understand someone else's point of view, or maybe I'm trying to persuade that person and change their mind. Again, these are all legitimate goals, but they're not the same goal. The point is, clarity about my purpose matters. It matters for my own thinking, so that I don't mistake speculation for evidence. And it matters when I'm dealing with other people, so we don't misunderstand each other and each other's intentions. The second habit is asking, how do I know? Because most of what we think we know isn't actually firsthand knowledge. It's filtered through layers and layers of reporting, of interpretation, and different assumptions. So before repeating or reacting to anything, it's worth asking, what is my source? Is it reliable? Has it been confirmed anywhere else? And if the answer to these questions is a viral tweet, that's probably not going to be enough. It's not going to cut it. Asking how do I know forces us to bring the right context back into focus. Not only the sources that we use, but also our assumptions and our own fallible memories before we decide what is true. The third habit is asking, am I sure? Because when we say that we know something, we are claiming certainty. But real certainty isn't about how strongly we feel about something. It's about whether our conclusions actually fit all the evidence and whether there is any alternative explanation that also fits the evidence and the facts just as well. Because if it does, then what we have is a probability and not certainty. The problem, however, is that our mind doesn't like uncertainty at all. So we crave closure, we take shortcuts, we jump to conclusions, we treat hunches like facts. And that's why it's useful to pause and assign a confidence level to what we believe. So we can ask ourselves, would I bet on this being true? Would I bet my money on this being true? How much money would I bet on this being true? And those questions then force us to check whether we are relying on hard evidence or just telling ourselves a story because it feels right and good. Most of life lives in the realm of probability. We cannot escape uncertainty, but what we can do is be honest about how much evidence we actually have and stay open to updating our conclusions as new facts come in. The fourth habit is asking, what would count as evidence that I'm wrong? And of course, most people don't like asking this question. It feels uncomfortable because it runs straight into our confirmation bias, or the tendency to look for evidence that supports what we already believe and ignore everything else. The simplest way to fight this is to actively imagine the alternative. So what would someone on the other side of the aisle of this issue say to this? What evidence would they bring up? What would the world have to look like for me to change my mind? And even if this doesn't convince you, this exercise will deepen your understanding of the issue, and it will make your own reasoning stronger. And here's the thing. If nothing could ever change your mind, then you're not actually looking for truth. You're defending a tribe, you're defending an identity or a narrative. So asking what would prove me wrong is the question that keeps you honest. The fifth habit is asking, is this the real reason? Or is that a real reason? Because when it comes to disinformation, people often give surface level explanations for why they believe what they believe or why they share something. But their motives are often deeper and not that obvious. So someone might say, I shared that post because it seemed important. But then the truth is that they shared it because it attacked the other side. And of course, that felt good. Others might insist that they only want to hear both sides of the story. But in reality, they never actually seek out sources that might contradict what they already believe. And then this habit forces us to be honest about what we're actually, or what's actually driving our reactions. If I'm convinced a certain conspiracy theory is true, is it really because of all the evidence, or is it because it basically fits my politics, or is it because it gives me a sense of certainty in a world that can be very uncertain? If I dismissed a news outlet as biased, is it because their facts are wrong, or is it because their facts make me feel uncomfortable? So being objective means cutting through the rationalizations that we tell ourselves and facing real reasons behind what we believe. The sixth habit asks maybe the hardest question, and that's, does anything matter to me more than the truth? Because if it does, then your objectivity is already compromised. So fear, ego, identity, all of these can tempt us to look away from facts, especially from facts that feel threatening. And in the world of disinformation, this often shows up when people refuse to examine claims that support their side, because winning the narrative feels more important to them than actually getting the story right. And we have to ask, what matters more to me, being right or getting it right? So online debates often turn to sport. I think that's the fun part of it, but it's also the ugly part of it. And the goal there is to destroy the opponent, and it's not to understand the issue. But the objective mind values truth about victory, and it doesn't measure success by how many likes you get or how many retweets or owning the other side, but by whether what we believe actually matches reality. The final habit is a reality check. Can I be objective now? Because sometimes, if we're being honest, the answer is no. Sometimes we feel fatigued, we're distracted, under stress, or feeling strong emotions that can basically make clear thinking impossible. I think we've all been there at times. And that's when more effort doesn't actually help. The objective thing to do at that point is not to push harder, it's actually to pause, to get perspective, and then to come back when your mind is steady enough to see facts more clearly. So these were the 7 habits, and now, because I have very little time left, I'm just going to give you briefly some additional practical tools that you can use in the information age, and then go to my conclusion. So one thing that should be something that we all do, but we don't because it's not quick, you need to check your primary source first. So don't rely on viral posts about what the police said, what the news outlets reported. Look for the actual press releases, watch the actual briefings, read the actual documents. The thing is that the original source often looks very different from the spin that it gets in the media. And news outlets and people in the media will sometimes be very sneaky about the language and the context, sometimes staying, technically factual, but removing important elements of the context. So for example, you can look at how in cases like Charlie Kirk's assassination, different news sources used words like died, killed, murdered, and assassinated. All 4 are true, but some of them are missing a very important part of the context. You also want to read across the spectrum. Read a source that you like, read a source that you don't like, and if there is such, read a source that's supposed to be neutral. If only one side of the political aisle is reporting something, if something is only being said in your echo chamber, you should be skeptical. Also, verify images and videos before you believe them and before you share them. We live in the age when AI tech is advancing very fast. It's becoming very hard to figure out what's real and what's not. There are also, and this is very common, fake screenshots, miscaptioned videos. So click through to the original page. Look at the metadata. Look at the upload date, the location, the context. If you cannot verify it, this is the point, don't use it as evidence. And also, I think this is very, very important to say, the AI summaries are very useful to organize information, but they're not the best source of information. They can very often be confidently wrong. So when you get something from AI, you need to double check it with a more reliable source. And lastly, hold yourself to one simple rule. If you wouldn't stake your reputation on it, don't share it. It's as simple as that. Over the course of the past week, we witnessed the first reactions and glimpsed the first consequences of events surrounding Charlie Kirk's assassination. We've heard the proclamations of civil war. More recently, a Republican congresswoman called for a peaceful national divorce across party lines. There are apparently being set call centers and databases to collect information on people who celebrated or in other ways inappropriately reacted to Charlie Kirk's death, with the goal of canceling those people. And I mean, the main goal is getting them fired from their jobs. This is eerily similar to something that we all remember. There are also public proclamations being made by the current government that they will designate some organizations on the left as terrorist organizations, defund them, close them down, and potentially prosecute some of the members. A couple of days ago, US State Attorney Pam Bondi stated that there is a difference between free speech and hate speech, that hate speech is unacceptable and that the administration plans to prosecute people over it. Because this wasn't enough, she also stated that they will go after people working at print stores who are refusing to print materials related to Charlie Kirk and the vigils. This is by no means a comprehensive list, and I want to stress again that it's only been a week. And then on the other hand, there's indisputably a growing culture of celebrating and glorifying violence on the left. This is not the first case of that we see in recent times. And this needs to be urgently addressed if there's any genuine desire to de-escalate the existing tensions. Now, I've focused on a story unfolding right now in the United States, and I realize this may seem a little bit distant to us Europeans. But what happens in the US rarely stays in the US. The cultural and political currents from the United States have a way of shaping debates and events everywhere else. And beyond that, many of us, me included, come from countries where political and social polarization has already reached dangerous levels. Americans are in no way unique in this. When a society splits into binaries, when people are told you're either with us or you're against us, the inevitable result is tribalism. And from there, it is a short step to eroding our individual rights, our right to speak freely, to think independently, to associate without fear, to participate fully in the society and the political process as free citizens and not as subjects. To fight this, we have to choose to be active thinkers in this age of passive consumers. To fight this, each one of us has to start by saying this: I will not surrender my mind to the mob, no matter which side the mob is on. And then crucially, we have to put this promise into practice. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you for your information. So recently I have been asking this question to myself, and I would love to know your opinion. So does tolerating disinformation in silence conflict with the objectivist virtue of integrity? Thank you.
I'm not sure I caught that. So if we are silent about disinformation, does that contradict with the values of objectivism? Did I get that correctly? I mean, absolutely. One of the values in objectivism is honesty, being honest with yourself and being honest with others. We also very much value justice, because this information, it's not just about abstract things, it's about real people. We want to pursue truth, we want to be just to other people, whether that's, whether those people deserve to be punished or rewarded, but we have to know and understand the truth to be able to make that distinction. So yes, I would say staying silent on things is in contradiction with objectivism. But one thing that I would add is that that doesn't mean that you have to post all of your opinions, beliefs on social media. I don't believe that. I personally don't do that. I try not to engage on social media. I read the information. I don't necessarily share my thoughts, but I am sharing my thoughts in talks like this, so I'm definitely not staying silent. So, there's no necessarily one right way how to, tell the truth and how to confront disinformation, but definitely do not stay silent and passive.
Thank you for your great speech. In your country, do you have any website from which you check disinformation or not? As I know, if you know many languages, you can just read so many articles and just compare new informations, and then you have results that you think carefully. But yeah, my question is about it. Thank you.
I don't know if we have a comprehensive website that does that. We definitely do have independent kind of journalists who investigate things and who are on top of this. So we do have sources of information that are fairly unbiased. We don't have one central point, from what I know, where we can do that. And that's another thing, like you cannot expect there to be a website that's gonna solve this problem for you. You're gonna have to do your legwork. You're gonna have to do your own research. And I don't mean this in a conspiratorial way. There are experts that actually know what they're talking about. But you're gonna have to do the thinking for yourself, and sometimes you're gonna make mistakes, but that's the part of being human. So that's one advice that I have, but definitely don't take what you read on social media at face value straight away. I'm just gonna give you an example. A few months ago, Katarina texted me that our government has killed a protester. And I was deeply disturbed, and I said, okay, if this happened, we are at civil war. Once this happens, like, there's no turning back. And then I asked her, well, where did you read this? She said, someone posted it on social media. And then I straight away went, searching, like, what is the anti-government mainstream media saying. There was nothing, and turned out not to be the case, fortunately. But situations like these, I mean, with Charlie Kirk's murder as well, this can very quickly turn into something very ugly. It can turn into civil unrest. I mean, we've seen that with George Floyd in the United States, what it can turn into. So be careful, I won't say be skeptical, be objective, and try not to react emotionally even when things are emotional, but maybe stay off the social media if you're feeling very angry or very sad until you're ready to actually re-engage.
Hello, thank you for your beautiful conversation and seminar. I was trying to set a question for everybody here, but I, of course, would like to hear it firsthand from you. There is lots of claiming amidst the society we live in to prevent disinformation. We all of us are facing now amidst in means of social media or the other media channels. So why do you think the people, the mass population of people, not maybe the people are here trying to be new intellectuals, but the mass population of people are blind they are turning blind to the ways of becoming not disinformed, like they could have reached David Kelly's maybe writings or Ayn Rand's writings. There are 7 or so other structured ways of not being disinformed, but people are keep disinformed. Why do you think that is?
I mean, there are multiple reasons for that, but the first and the obvious one is because this is hard and what they're doing is easy. It's very hard to stay objective. It's, you know, with the Charlie Kirk's case, I had my theories, of course. I'm not immune to that. I like being right, so that can sometimes be a problem. But, you know, you have to keep yourself accountable to yourself. Now, I would like to believe that there's a reality where we can have most people do this. Hopefully at one point human beings will evolve and we will be there. But I don't think that's the case now. But the important thing is for the leaders in the society, the thought leaders, the political leaders, and leaders in the other aspects of the society to, you know, try and stay honest to themselves and to the others. And this is, I think, the way in which we, to an extent, fix this. There are also other reasons, you know. I think, you know, people are prone to indoctrination. I think indoctrination is now much easier than it ever was. And, you know, once you are indoctrinated, it's very, very difficult to be objective.
Sorry, can we say they are also cause of laziness?
Yes, yes, yeah. Well, that's what I meant. That's easy.
You mentioned that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You know, people are lazy, and it's easy to, you know, just believe the first thing that you read. So, okay, thank you guys so much.